The supply chain for that kind of work, it used to exist here. It's to the detriment of the wider world that we've decided that everything should be shipped in from wherever's cheapest.
In the 19th century, there was a connection, and people had this sort of bond with things that they made in a way that today we're just so separated from.
Really lovely documentary, and it just made me really contemplate on where my clothes come from and all of the steps along the chain to making it come into fruition. The intention, the practicality, and the care going into a garment was really encompassed by this piece. And it was detailed and informative, but in a very digestible pace. And it had a real sense of peace and meditation to it. The intention into each step, you could feel that state of flow with each of the participants. It really lovely and kind of inventive framing with the filming, from capturing the large overview of the process, but also the small technical details, from the dance of the weaving machine to the march of the sheep, and the swirling of the dye. So really great capturing of the textures, but also the movement in these textures. From the pastures to Bloor Street, I thought it was just a really encompassing journey.
I think, the concept of where our clothes come from isn't something that's widely thought about, especially with the accessibility of fast fashion through, different shopping apps and Amazon and everything of the sort. And also just kind of the thought of the artistry of these clothing items, even if they aren't, walking the runway in Dior and all of that. Like, there's still a lot of time and effort and craft and a lot of people that go into making a garment, and how important making that garment is for them. I think this piece highlights that in a really approachable way. There's a lot of information presented in this piece, but it's not done. It could easily be done to make the person watching feel shameful of any fast fashion item that they have, but it's done in a compelling and understanding way to let to just inform the audience of the process of making clothing and the hard work that goes into it. It was just a really informative piece, really interesting piece. I loved watching them. I was going to say make wool, shear wool, I guess would be the proper term. But overall, really informative piece, really well done.
Very timely film, especially in this age of instant gratification and fast fashion. Seeing something that puts emphasis on these works that take time and effort and produce quality from people who put their blood, sweat, and tears and love and passion into it, and how important that is. I thought that was a really important message, especially for people in today's age. I really loved the structure of this film. I thought it was very easy to follow, especially with it going from sheep all the way to the weaver who turns the wool into the jacket. I loved how step by step we heard from each person in that process, and how you could also just feel their love and passion for what they do, from the woman who raises and breeds the sheep to create that perfect wool, to the man who dyes the wool, and then to the weaver who finally makes it into that jacket. I thought that was a very cool journey to go on with these filmmakers.
I thought that this one was a pretty cool concept for a documentary to focus on. And I thought it did a good job of really going in and setting up the background for the film before getting into the title of it, getting into the jacket itself and focusing on that. It did a good job, I think, of drawing the viewer in, providing appropriate context for the things that they were going to talk about later, and explaining that in a way that was easy to understand, that was approachable, and that made sense for an audience that in all likelihood isn't going to know much about making wool clothing or dyeing wool or anything like that. The subjects here, they were all clearly knowledgeable about the things that they were talking about. And overall, I thought that this did a good job of doing what it set out to do.
The strength of a documentary rises and dies on the subject matter. I say that all the time, and I think what I liked this documentary had really good subject matter, and it started off really strong as far as asking an interesting question about how to make how can we make textiles locally in this 100-mile area radius. And I think that that was a very interesting question that had me um wanting to stick around and find out the answer. And I think the concept of tracing kind of like a how it's made, of tracing from the sheep to the dye to the textile to all of the different steps along the way to making this thing uh was a good structure for a documentary.
This idea of like sustainability and being able to source something back. So this story was really, really interesting, and really getting not just a quick overview, but really being able to dig into kind of each step, the from the sheep all the way through to the jacket itself, and being able to get the perspective of kind of each phase and how the entire project came to be. I thought was really, really fascinating.
The footage and lighting and the passion that they show in the making, not only of this particular jacket, but the whole production chain, the breeding of the sheep and the dyeing process all together to produce this high quality local wool. It is just amazing. I love how they showcase this traditional way of weaving, and the final products are remarkably extraordinary, and you can see all the nurturing it involves in producing this fabrics. And I was just amazed, and the jacket is just amazing, highly stylish, and this is a great film. I learned a lot.
The 100-mile jacket was a nice little, short about, this wool stuff. And I think that it was made really well, like showing off why this industry could still exist, why it's still good. And it's just nice seeing that, all of how they do the things, that the process was really interesting to learn about. It was all very intriguing, and I think it was done very well.